Hello everyone, welcome to Bald Guy Money, and in July 2021, in one of my first ever videos here on YouTube, I told you all why I thought setting a stacking target of 5 ounces of gold and 200 ounces of silver was the best way to get started in precious metals, because it not only set a goal for you to move towards, but it also created a precious metals savings account that covered a little more than 3 months of expenses at the time that a person wasn't likely to touch unless it was an emergency, meaning it probably wouldn't get wasted on an impulse purchase. It would be there when you need it. Now, since I made that video, the prices of gold and silver are up 84% and 25% respectively, and that amount of gold and silver when measured in US dollars has gone from $14,300 in savings up to $23,169 in savings, which is a 62% increase since that video first aired. And it now covers, at least according to the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics data in the United States, the essential expenses for an American for more than 4 months. So this has not only preserved the value of your money, it has actually grown it. And for anyone who is just starting in precious metals, whether you live in the United States or in a lower cost country, I still think this is a fantastic starting target to aim for, as having 3 to 6 months in expenses saved up makes life a lot less stressful. But with the trend of layoffs that we saw start to heat up in 2024, continuing into 2025, and total job openings all around the world crashing in a similar fashion to what you're seeing in this image here for the United States, where the labor market has seen 40% of its job openings disappear since the 2022 highs, people are starting to ask me, how much gold and silver do I need to survive the worst of what this economy has to throw at me? So in this video, I have prepared the numbers for both people of working age and for retirees to show you all exactly how much gold and silver I think you need to weather this storm and prepare yourself for a worst case scenario. And once that's covered, I want to address the topic of gold revaluation one more time, and that includes a clip of exactly what Scott Bessent, the US Treasury Secretary, said about the topic and why I still think it could happen as early as 2026. So be sure to watch to the very end of this video for that important information. But just before we dive in, please remember to check out www.summitmetals.com to join the growing number of my viewers who have made Summit their first choice when it comes to buying gold and silver. And if you're serious about getting on a dollar cost average buying schedule for gold and silver, try their new subscription service that allows you to pick your favorite gold or silver, coin or bar, and have it automatically shipped to you at the start of every month. Link to that is in the description below. Okay, so jumping in, I think we're already in the process of seeing what will be a steep economic correction, and I've been talking about it since the end of 2023, and although it hasn't shown up in official US data yet, and Jerome Powell keeps insisting that the US labor market is strong, unemployment has been ticking up in countries around the world like Canada, where unemployment has gone up about 44% since the 2022 lows and now stands at nearly 7% on the backdrop of a 43% contraction in available jobs. Now, at the same time, in the United States, despite a similar contraction in job openings from the 2022 highs, unemployment has only gone up by 24%. So, if you weren't suspicious about official US jobs data that keep getting revised down every single month before today, well, I hope at least looking at this data, even the most skeptical of you are now thinking twice about the accuracy of the US unemployment number. And what this tells us is the United States and the world economy are in a slowdown, likely a recession, and that means pain ahead. Now, how long is that pain going to last? I can't say exactly, but judging by the US recessions we've seen since 1973, which have lasted an average of 10.6 months per recession, it's likely that we're going to see something that will last about 12 to 18 months. And for people working a job, that is precisely what you need to be prepared for. And I know it's a lot to ask of some of you, but remember, I wasn't asked to make anybody feel good about what they already have when it comes to their current gold and silver stack. I was asked to be honest about what someone needs to be absolutely safe in a recession. And if we assume that you need 18 months of savings, because that's how long these longer recessions have lasted since 1973, based on the monthly expense data I showed earlier, you need a little more than $100,000 in today's dollar value to get you through it, which, if saved totally in gold, equals about 30.5 troy ounces of gold at today's prices, and if saved totally in silver, is about 3,100 troy ounces, again at spot price today. And I know many of you in the bald guy community who are watching this video right now are already there. Some of you might even have that amount in both gold and silver. So if that's you, congratulations, hats off. But if you're not quite there yet and wondering what mix of gold and silver I would stack to achieve this goal, because I have never encouraged saving 100% in one metal, in either gold or silver, I think 25 ounces of gold and 560 ounces of silver, which is an approximate 80% cash allocation to gold and 20% cash allocation to silver, gives you enough exposure to benefit from silver's potential appreciation at a faster rate than gold, while anchoring the value of your position in the stability of the tier 1 asset that central banks just can't seem to get enough of, which is gold. And this is the approach that, at least from my point of view, makes the most sense. Now, with that said, that is how things apply to people of working age, people who may find themselves out of work for a period of 18 months. But what about retirees? Well, in an environment where national pension funds are struggling to remain fully funded, and the U.S. Social Security program is admitting, based on numbers from the U.S. Congressional Budget Office, that benefit recipients may be forced to take a 23% reduction in their benefits by 2033, which is only 8 years from now, by the way, it makes sense for retirees and people entering retirement age to start thinking about ways to self-fund a decent portion of that time spent not working in retirement, at least in part with gold and silver. Now, this is always a touchy topic because every time I talk about retiring, somebody chimes in the comments section and says, well, according to such and such article, you need $2 million to retire. And what you need to know is that is complete nonsense. And a lot of these financial news sites generate those titles for clicks, while at the same time publishing other articles that completely contradict the $2 million to retire narrative. Because as things realistically stand today, the typical American needs roughly $900,000 for retirement, of which part will be covered by Social Security. And if we factor in that 23% reduction to benefits right now, the one that the U.S. Congressional Budget Office is saying is going to happen in 8 years, it means a retiree will have to self-fund nearly $640,000 in today's dollar value for their retirement. And if we're assuming a 15-year retirement where you retire at 65 and live till 80, I think that's a reasonable consideration to make. I think having at least 1/3 of that retirement secured in precious metals makes complete sense. Because if politicians predictably just print up the money to fill the gaps in Social Security or whatever the national pension fund in your country is called, the gold and silver will not only maintain its present value, but as it has since my 2021 stacking video, where 5 ounces of gold and 200 ounces of silver have gone from covering 3 months of life expenses for the average American to now more than 4 months, I think that amount will likely grow. And it's why, at a similar 80% gold, 20% silver cash allocation, I think a retiree can feel safe, ultimately safe, no matter what happens, with 53 ounces of gold and 1,262 ounces of silver, which in today's dollars is worth $212,220, which is precisely 1/3 of the total self-funded retirement amount I showed you a moment ago. And if this is something you intend to aim for, please screenshot this right now and make your plans on how you intend to get there. Now, just before we discuss revaluing gold to higher levels, which is a topic none of you will want to miss, please remember that if you want to diversify your hard asset portfolio into land, visit channel partner landofland.com. They have beautifully located lots like this one here in Arkansas for $2,495, which is less than the price of 1 ounce of gold and is perfect for anyone who wants to buy a container home and set it up close to a body of water as an Airbnb to generate some passive income. So check them out at landofland.com and remember to use code BALDGUY to get $300 off your purchase and get something that can't be printed by the Federal Reserve and get it before the Federal Reserve starts printing. Okay, so with that covered, it's now time to cover this video's viewer question. And remember, I answer one viewer question in every video I do. I take them from the comments section below, so please don't be shy. Leave your questions below, and you never know, your question may appear in a future video. And this week's question comes from PNEFC001, who asked me about a topic I touched on in last week's video, and that is the revaluation of gold. And to be fair, a few people asked me this same question, and instead of ignoring challenges to my position on this, I prefer to take them head on. And what this person asked is, didn't Scott Bessent, who is the Secretary of Treasury in the United States, say that the United States would not revalue its gold? And another viewer chimed in. I've also added their comment there so you can see it. His name is Gregory, saying it is only a fantasy that gold and silver stackers want to believe in. So, to start this one off, let's take a look at exactly what Scott Bessent said during his recent appearance on Bloomberg.
Thing potentially that could happen, and people are questioning it, is maybe remarking gold. Elon Musk, who's leading Doge, was talking about maybe going to Fort Knox to make sure those gold reserves are there. That comes under your purview. Do you have any plans to visit Kentucky?
I don't have any plans. I can tell you that we do an audit every year. I can tell the American people on camera right now that there was a report September 30th, 2024. All the gold is there. Any U.S. senator who wants to come and visit it can arrange a visit through our office.
Gold was your biggest holding when you were a hedge fund manager before you divested to become the Treasury Secretary. So you know the value of where gold is right now versus where it's marked on its balance sheet, just north of $40 an ounce. It's close to $3,000. Is it under consideration for this administration to revalue gold?
I think that somehow when we were talking about the sovereign wealth fund and I said monetize the balance sheet, I can promise you that's not what I had in mind.
So, as you've just heard, Scott Bessent was confronted about the topic on Bloomberg, and where a lot of people are saying that he has denied a revaluation will happen outright. If we listen carefully to what he said in the interview, his words were, "I can promise you that's not what I had in mind." And I know many of you will interpret that in different ways. Maybe some of you even hear a hard no in those words. But if you're like me, you heard a diplomatic way of saying the Fort Knox gold is there, and revaluation is a topic we're not ready to discuss quite yet. And before I elaborate on why I think he said this the way he said it, I want to address the fantasy comment made by Gregory in the comments section, which was a response to the original question. Because, Gregory, I see you're a subscriber, so if you're watching this, I want to say, I agree with you in that there are a lot of fantasies in the precious metals community surrounding the revaluation of gold, specifically ones where people say the U.S. revaluation will be done to back up the country's entire $36 trillion of debt using the gold they hold in reserve, essentially making people who hold gold today rich overnight. And why I say it would make people rich overnight is because that would revalue gold to nearly $140,000 per ounce, with an additional expectation within the precious metals community that the gold to silver ratio will then return to about 15-1, putting silver at nearly $10,000 an ounce. And let me be perfectly clear. When I'm talking about the topic of revaluation, this is the fantasy side. This is not what I believe in, and this is not what I think is going to happen. And although this sounds nice, it's not something the market would be able to take seriously, and it would shake any remaining confidence people have in the US dollar, as this action would be an admission that the US dollar is worthless. That's the first thing. And it would mean, just so you understand the consequences of this and why I do not think it will happen, if you are holding $140,000 in US bonds today, let's Suppose you're China holding all of these treasuries, or the Bank of Japan, or even an individual private investor who has purchased $140,000 in US bonds. What we're saying is if this revaluation is done, the US government can essentially settle your account with an ounce of gold, which you could buy yourself for $3,325 today. And that would equate to a 98% markdown on the debt that you own. Because armed with this knowledge beforehand, if the United States just bought the gold right before they made the announcement, they're basically settling their debt to you, a person who's holding $140,000 in US treasuries, for a little more than 2 cents on the dollar. So for every dollar you've loaned them, you're only getting about 2 cents back because of this arbitrary decision that they've made and prepared themselves for in advance before making the announcement. And as a result of that, believe me when I say, nobody would lend money to the United States government ever again. So I hope you all understand that and why this is not likely to happen in this manner. Now, coming back to Scott Bessent, the reason he is not going on Bloomberg and admitting this is something the administration is at least considering is because it would cause turmoil in an already volatile bond market for many reasons. The first one being that we've already seen a little turmoil caused by simply words when President Trump called Jerome Powell too late. So Bessent is aware of what words can do, and he is choosing his words very carefully because hinting at a new type of gold-backed bond may crash demand for current bonds as people wait for the safer gold-backed ones to be issued. And that would increase the real rate of interest, forcing the US government to pay even more to service their debt than they're already paying. And honestly speaking, the list of consequences by revealing their hand now before they actually make a decision on it goes on and on and on, and includes a potential dollar crash, a spike in gold price, which, if they are secretly buying gold right now to fill holes in the reserves, is just another thing they don't want to have happen. Not yet, at least. So although there are and will be many interpretations of what he said, it's clear that he did not say a revaluation will never happen. And as far as I'm concerned, the answer was a classic dodge with no more clarity on the topic now than we had before. But I will say this on the topic. Although I expect to see a gold revaluation to market prices by 2026 at the earliest, it may happen later, by the way. Whether it happens or not doesn't change the fact that central banks of the world continue to buy gold, and there is almost certainly a reason why they're buying gold. And if it's not revaluation, it's due to the instability of the US dollar itself, which may slowly have to be replaced by an alternative settlement currency, which will not happen overnight. It will take time to play out. But it doesn't change the fact that gold is already on the open market being revalued, as it's already been revalued up nearly 27% in 2025, more than 41% over the last year, and nearly 100% over the last 5 years, to reflect the falling value of the US dollar and other global currencies. And in a world where governments are having problems funding themselves and the programs that they've promised to their citizens, and I will come back to this image from earlier in the video, borrowing against their assets, taking a second mortgage on the house, which includes the land and energy leases Bessent supposedly prefers, makes perfect sense if you're trying to prevent default and collapse. But I will add that this is a global problem. This is not just a USA problem, and there are multiple factors that may push governments towards their own revaluation solutions without the involvement of the US government, which includes revaluation of gold reserves using a mark-to-market model, the one I mentioned in my last video, without any fantasy, while delivering all the real benefits governments and central banks are looking to unlock. So I hope that answers your question. So with that said, that's it for this video. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch it. If you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like. And if there are people in your life who you think need to hear this message, please remember to share this video with them. And until the next time we see each other, everybody, please remember to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'm wishing you all a fantastic day ahead. See you in the next video. Goodbye.